Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Breaking Into Software. It's your host, Sarah Hudson. Today's podcast is another interview. I love to invite people onto the show so that we can learn from them. My guests all have varying backgrounds. They include full-time software engineers, recruiters, and interns from top tech companies, to random topic experts and much more. Their backgrounds also vary, from conventional engineers to some of the most diverse people you can think of. But they all have one thing in common. I chose them because I think they can offer us all valuable insight through advice or personal stories about what it takes professionally, mentally, and physically to break into software. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really excited to be interviewing you. If you want to start by just introducing yourself to the audience and telling us a little bit about your background.
Sure thing. I'm Mark Bell. I'm 44 years old. I have a wife that I've been married to for 20 years. I have two children. I got a son named Jake. He's 16 years old, 17 years old. I have a daughter named Quinn. She's 13 years old. I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York, and moved to California. And that's where I met my wife. I met her pretty shortly after I moved to California. I have lived in a bunch of different states, kind of lived all over the place, did some professional wrestling, played football when I was young, but lifting weights was something that was always there for me. I started when I was 12, and I basically never looked back, and studied everything from strength training to bodybuilding, studied and have done many different routines in the gym. Any routine you've ever heard of, I probably have done. And then in addition to that, experimented a lot with a ketogenic style diet, low carb diets, fasting. Right now I'm in the middle of a fasting mimicking diet, and I'm on day 4 of 5. So I just got one more day to go. I love to always kind of be in search of improvement. I have a white belt mentality, and I'm always doing my best to continue to learn, and then take that learning and take some of that knowledge that I end up with and turn it into wisdom and actually apply it in my day-to-day. So I think that sums me up pretty well. As a power lifter, which is where I've gotten a lot of notoriety, I still utilize the powerlifting movements, but I'm retired from the sport. I at one point squatted 1,080, bench pressed 854 pounds, and deadlifted 766 pounds. That's how I got named the people's coach, and I still help people with powerlifting quite a bit. It's still a huge passion for me, but in terms of me being competitive and lifting those big weights, that's in the rearview mirror.
Nice. And you also help a lot of people. I noticed that you like to gather information and then you sort of give that information back out. So you've got a business that is really successful, a podcast, I think a YouTube channel as well. You have a lot of things going on. Do you want to talk a little bit about those and just ways you've been helping other people over the last few years?
Yeah, along with my team, we are some content creating machines over here. We have thousands upon thousands of videos, to the point where it's nearly impossible for anybody to ever seen everything that we've done. But I've had a YouTube channel since 2007. Even before I was aware of YouTube, I was recording stuff on video and putting it online in other mediums, other forms of media. I have, recorded a lot of stuff for powerlifting. I've done a lot of stuff where I talk about nutrition. I've showed people my own weight loss journey. I've lost over 100 pounds. I've coached a lot of people and helped a lot of people lose 100 pounds as well. And it's primarily been through a ketogenic diet, or what I like to call a war on carbs, which is basically just, in very simple terms, it's just chopping out a macronutrient out of your life. And it doesn't mean it's completely, and it doesn't mean that it's forever, but it's something I found to be really, really effective, because if you're going to overeat on anything, a lot of times it ends up being a combination of carbohydrates and fats. That's where we end up with pizza. That's where we end up with ice cream and foods like that. They're not bad foods necessarily, but good luck trying not to overeat them. So that's where I've spent a lot of my time, is really trying to pull all this information together, because it can be so confusing. I think that the USDA has like a recommendation for carbohydrates, and I think they want it to be like 60% of your diet or something like that, or 50% of your diet. And you don't even need dietary carbohydrates. They're not necessary in a way. Your body makes glucose. Your body will make it. So, you don't, it's not an essential nutrient for you to sustain life. It might be important to have it here and there because it could help give you some energy, but I view it more as an energy source than a real nutrient. And then I'm trying just to basically take a lot of this information and help to give it to people and deliver it to people in a very easy, digestible fashion, and then give people tangible things. What can I do? I remember as a kid, and I would read a magazine. I remember being excited when I saw something that I could like rip out of a magazine. I go, whoosh, and I can just be like, you know what? I'm going to go do this. And we don't have enough of that information around anymore, but we are seeing more people utilizing social media to do stuff like that, where it's like, hey, here's this recipe for this meal that I cooked, came out great, only took 10 minutes. And that's why I ended up with so many videos. I don't think there's anybody else in fitness or nutrition that has more videos than we produce over here. I have a podcast called Mark Bell's Power Project. I have a YouTube channel called Super Training '06, which is more lifting heavy weights and stuff like that. And then I also have Mark Smelly Bell, which is my own just kind of YouTube channel where I share like philosophy, and I share stuff about my business. And I forgot to mention earlier, I'm an inventor. So that was something that I missed in my profile. I have several United States patents, and I share some of the success I've had in business and how I've been able to navigate those waters with people.
Nice. So just quickly for the listeners, the reason that I wanted to interview you today, because they might be going, what does this have to do with software? So my podcast is all about like, how can young people or people from different backgrounds get into some of the largest tech companies around today? And there's a lot of strategy behind that. But one of the things I think is often overlooked is, how does health and nutrition, fitness, your sleep, how do those all play into mental agility, concentration, your ability to study for long periods of time, which is really necessary for preparing for these interviews and things like that. And I think people a lot of times focus on prepping for the interviews, and they will read a ton of resources behind that, like math and algorithms and things like that. But I rarely see people in my field really looking, especially at my age, students in engineering, looking into how can I perform better from a mental standpoint? And I think diet and sleep quality and exercise play a lot into that. And you have a lot of background, I think, messing with some of those variables and figuring out, how does adjusting this affect my productivity? So if you want to talk about some of that, like maybe lessons you've learned since you were young about how all of that affects your ability to produce more content, manage your business better, things like that.
Yeah, being like being a meathead and being someone that spends so much time in the gym, I never thought that software and technology would be anything that I really had to mess with or learn, but I mean, I am like technology deficient. I don't do well with technology, so I always have to like pass my phone off to somebody who's younger to assist me with it. I'm one of those people. So being a person that's on social media and being a person that's doing all these different things all the time, it was important for me personally to have a good team of people that can assist me with it, because I do sell stuff online, and if our website's down, we're shot. We're done. If we have problems with the website, or someone can't order something. One time we actually had a situation where people would order an item, but they wouldn't get like confirmation. And so some people were really trying to order this thing, and they would not get an order confirmation. So they didn't know if they were actually putting in the order. And so we had to go back through hundreds and hundreds of orders, because we had a launch that week, and we had to, give people their money back. And it was just like, it was wild. But, I never thought, being on a podcast talking about like software and stuff, I never thought this would be anything I would have to ever deal with. But it's important that you take this white belt mentality into a lot of different categories in your life. And for people that aren't really paying attention to their nutrition, your health is your wealth. So you might feel the way I feel about technology. You might feel that way towards nutrition. You might be like, I don't really know what's going on, but I'm, pretty addicted to food, and I would like to look better, feel better, but I'm not really sure what to do about it. That's my life mission. Is, I often will say I want to make the world a better place to lift, and that's just kind of a catchphrase of like, I would like to lower the barrier of entry into fitness. I'd like to lower the barrier of entry into nutrition. I don't want people to think that it's too hard. I don't want people to think, man, like I'm just going to be eating like asparagus and broccoli and chicken. And that can be an effective way to lose some weight if those are foods that you're really into. But there's so much more to it. And if you're going long term, you can have all different kinds of things in your day-to-day nutrition even, but you might have to spread out the junk food, or you might have to have the junk food more occasionally, or ration it out in some reasonable fashion. And it just depends on where you're starting as well. But your health is your wealth. And when I interview people for jobs and stuff, their appearance is huge. We'd like to think like we're not going to judge a book by its cover. We're going to be very empathetic of people and very understanding of people. But if somebody comes in a tank top and some baggy pants, and they just looked like they really didn't take the interview very seriously, they didn't put on their best clothes that they have. They didn't give their best effort in the meeting or in the interview. I'm probably going to be less likely to want to have them be part of what we have here at Slingshot. And in my business, we have created a culture of like-minded people. I have found that it's been really useful. I want other people to shoot my ideas down hard, just like I might shoot their ideas down. But let's throw out a lot of ideas, and let's really think of stuff. I don't want a dictatorship. I don't want people being like, well, let's just wait and see what Mark thinks, because last time he got really mad. Remember, he flipped that table over? I don't want a culture like that. I want a culture where everyone's in it together, and everyone can contribute on anything. So if you work in media here at Slingshot and you have an idea for a t-shirt, boom, we're going to go print it out. And we're going to see what it looks like. Hey, that's a cool idea. Let's give it a try. Let's see what it does. Some ideas, sometimes we don't make every idea that we have, but we're like, let's give it a shot. A unique thing that we have going on here at Slingshot, and this is not anything that's forced, and I think that is a critical component to a lot of things in life, is that you don't force anything. You allow things to come to you, because success is not something that you chase. Success is something that you attract, and you attract it by being an attractive person. And I'm not talking about necessarily the genetics that you were born with. I'm talking about you having attractive features, attractive disciplines, not necessarily just the look, but the look does factor into it. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but if someone who's really heavy comes into a meeting and they're several hundred pounds overweight, that is way different than and it shouldn't be. I understand that. I recognize that, but it is part of the world that we're in. And you may have certain preconceived notions over a certain way that someone is going to act or be. What if you had a job, you wanted to hire a media person, a cameraman, and you put out this call for a cameraman, and a 75-year-old man shows up. You're going to judge that book by its cover, and you're going to be like, I don't even know if this guy understands how to work some of these cameras. You're going to automatically think these things that could definitely not be true. The guy could be amazing at his job, and you might have to give him an opportunity. But the point is, it's like there are options for you with your health, with your nutrition, with simple things like walking, getting in some type of weight training here and there. There are simple things you can apply to your life, to your everyday, to where you are looking a little bit healthier and you're acting a little bit healthier. Some fasting, along with mainly just eating protein. Like, people usually don't eat enough protein. I think the standard American diet, people are eating about 12% protein. If that was brought up to like 20% protein, everyone's calories would go down because protein is the most satiating macronutrient that there is. It's going to fill you up. So if you eat, I mean, just think about it. How much chicken breast can you actually eat before you're like, I'm pretty much done? But if you were to pour teriyaki sauce on there and have rice with it, now you can eat a big old bowl of it because you have other nutrients in there that are going to allow you to, or not allow you to, but they're going to promote overeating in a way. We have sugar, we have salt. Most of the stuff in grocery stores, we see about 80% of the grocery store is full of processed foods. And you need to get out of those processed foods aisle. And you need to recognize none of those things, they're called processed foods, but they should be called processed something else because none of them are actually food. And if you just simply, you take away from this podcast, you take away from this show today, eat real food and learn to cook. Might sound like a huge undertaking, but it can be fun and it can be something that can change your life, because if you have your health, you're going to be able to respond to stuff quicker. When you go into meetings, when you have a long day, I have not really slept very well in the last like 15 years. I'm getting on track with my sleep more recently, but I am never tired. I am always fired up. I am always excited. There's some days where I might be a little bit down more so than others, but I come here prepared every day. I'm always ready to go. I'm super excited. I don't even feel like I necessarily need 8 hours of sleep like most other people. And one of the reasons is because I attribute that to my nutrition. Like I feel great every day. I feel ready to take on stuff. One of my sayings that I share with people often is do more, be more. The more that you do, the more that you can become. So if you have all your boxes checked, you are trying to work in tech and you technology really well, you're pretty well rounded, or you're very vertical in one particular area, that's really cool. But you want to start to check off some of these other boxes, because if you're not healthy, you're not going to really be able to enjoy some of the success that you have. And I would say beyond that, you want to be able to enjoy that success with other people, because if you're a multi-millionaire or something, that's kind of neat, but yeah, I don't know, you just live in some big house by yourself. Like, it'd be nice to share it with other people, a wife, a significant other,
Yeah.
children, something. And then you have even have a legacy to perhaps pass down to your kids. So having your health, I think, is very much overlooked.
Yes, I totally 100% agree. And especially just because I think it's something that's not really taught in schools, right? Public schools don't teach about nutrition. They don't teach really anything except for eat a lot of whole grains and get some exercise every day, but they don't go into really any detail. And well, we both know that the nutrition recommendations by the US are pretty off. So even just quickly into that, if I am someone who, I sort of eat whatever I feel like eating, but I look fine now, is there a reason you would still recommend changing my diet or even getting exercise every day, even if maybe I'm totally happy with my appearance?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are in that boat, and they have an acceptance of their body, which is great, and they do feel good. They don't notice that they have any sort of interrupted sleep. They feel good day to day. It's just a matter of like, it would be nice for you to know what is optimal. What's out there for me. Let's take somebody like The Rock. He's just a great example because he got hundreds of millions of followers on different social media platforms. He's making movies. He's making these appearances all over the place. He's got commercials on TV with Under Armour, and he's all over the place. If you were to ask The Rock, hey, can you do better than what you're doing now? He would say yes. You'd say, hey, like, do you think you could do more, like, with your relationship, with your significant other? He'd be like, yep. Can you do more with your children? Is there more? Is there is there an opportunity for you to figure out how to be better at that? I should say, rather than more time, because maybe he literally doesn't have time necessarily. And he would say yes. Can he do better with his nutrition? Can he do better with his exercise? And again, the answer is yes. So like, why, let's say, let's take Elon Musk, who just became the richest man in the world. Why does Elon Musk care about continuing to make money? Well, it's going to cost a lot of money to get to Mars, for one. But it's now just a byproduct of him seeing what's available to him, what's out there. Money can help you purchase resources that can make things more convenient for you. Your health can do the same thing. Your health can purchase stuff for you in a way that you may not have realized or recognized before, because if you feel better, just simply being just simply like feeling okay or feeling pretty good is one thing. But what about being in a really good mood? What about when you're in a kick-ass mood, you're being funny, you're being silly, or you're just even, maybe that's not your nature, but you're just being yourself really well that day. You're portraying yourself really well that day. That is a really wonderful feeling. And it's my belief that the more serious that we take our nutrition, or at least have some rules around our nutrition, the more likely we are to get into those zones and get into those things. So for somebody like yourself, and anybody listening that doesn't necessarily have an issue with their weight, they feel comfortable. I think that's an amazing thing to have, especially for people that are younger. Normally, we don't see that happen to, especially like it seems like with women, it doesn't happen until they're almost like 40 years old, until they finally kind of figure out like, hey, this is my body, and I feel pretty damn good about it. And that kind of sucks in some ways. But for people that are not necessarily overweight, and don't have any sort of health issues, I would say that being healthier can just help you to be able to do a lot more every day, and to be able to put more into every day. So it's not so much about like, oh, I feel good. It's like, well, let's see what would happen if you felt great. And imagine if you felt like freaking great every single day. We can see, what some of those things would do. And where I would recommend for most people is a lower carbohydrate style diet, or depends on kind of where you're coming from, even just trying to ditch processed foods. Like there's not a lot of great reasons, no matter how healthy you are, or how healthy you think you are, there's not a lot of great reasons to eat packaged processed foods. Nor is there, and actually there's no reason. And this is a thing I take a pretty hard stance against, is drinking calories, especially from like sodas and your Starbucks coffees and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People just need to be a little careful with some stuff like that. So here's part of the gig, though. If you want to enjoy some sugar in your Starbucks coffee, go on a couple 10-minute walks every day, because the 10-minute walks will really help to regulate your glucose levels. That's going to be something that would be problematic if you had a Frappuccino from Starbucks. It's going to launch your glucose levels up, and then to follow that, your insulin levels will go up. And over a period of time, you can develop what's called fatty liver disease. From having fatty liver disease, you can also then morph into being insulin resistant, which eventually turns into diabetes. I'm not saying that this happens for everybody that way, because overeating in general is the main thing that will really expedite that process and make it happen faster. But there's also millions of Americans that aren't fat, that are insulin resistant, and that have diabetes, and that have fatty liver. They're actually fat on the inside because they have done some damage. So I don't want anyone to take away from this that you got to be scared, and you got to be a fitness freak, and you have to watch every single thing that you eat. Just be mindful and say, I wonder how many carbohydrates I ate for today. And if you're not very active, I would need you to give me some good explanations on why you're eating more than like 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. Once we get beyond that, I'm just kind of thinking like those are carbohydrates you just don't need.
Right.
So I would really just say, look, it's about, trying to figure out what's gonna make you feel the best, Now, there's one last thing I want to mention is that if you don't have enough of the foods that you enjoy in there, you might not feel your best and you might not be super excited. So it also might take a while for you to get used to the new foods and for you to kind of maybe ditch some foods that maybe you have a bad habit with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just to the point of nutrition and exercise and people not really thinking a lot about it, I heard a really good quote the other day that was, if you're not being intentional, you're being accidental, and there's not really an
Mm,
in between. And I think a lot of people are very accidental about a lot of things in their life, including just things like time. We let it just fly out the window. We all have the same amount of hours and minutes and seconds in a
mhm.
day, but for some reason, some people are able to get much more done with that same amount of time. And so that is my next question is what tricks or tips would you have for people who are trying to get better at time management?
Try to condense and consolidate stuff the best that you can. Um, an example of that could be it could be a workout, cardiovascular training, and going on like a treadmill or going on elliptical. Those things can be great and they can be really efficient and effective. Um, but what's going to give you more bang for your buck is to lift weights, because lift weights can work your cardiovascular system. It can also work your nervous system and work your muscular system. And you can have kind of a, when you lift weights and you eat sufficient amounts of protein, you are building muscle. And when you build muscle, you allow the human body to do what it was meant to do. Your body is meant to be able to utilize energy efficiently. So the more muscle mass that you have, the more calories that your body chews up, the more calories that you need. Your caloric demands go up, and you would have to eat a significant amount more to quote unquote make yourself fat once you have started to pack on some muscle. So muscle is like an insurance policy. It's like putting money in the stock market. Like it's going to be something that will pay off for you, but it might take a while. It's going to be kind of down the road. So that's the annoying and the frustrating part is it takes some time. But I think men, women, children, uh, the elderly, I think everybody should be lifting weights. For women, what it does for the bones and just what I've seen it do for everybody really is it's very empowering. I think maybe some people have been kind of told like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that type of stuff when you're a kid. And I think maybe especially girls, because we take the boys and we kind of stick them over in this category, take the girls, kind of stick them over that category. And the boys are rough and tumble, and the girls, that's not really a way for a girl to act type of deal. Well, when it comes to the gym, everyone gets to act whatever which way they want. And girls can come in and do some heavy deadlifts and flip
Yeah.
over some tires and smash, the tire with a big giant hammer and do all these things. And I've seen it firsthand. These women come in and they don't have the build that they want. They're not as confident. And then after they're here for like 2-3 weeks, lifting heavy weight, learning the technique, I noticed that they're coming in wearing stuff that's way different than when they first came in. When they first came in, they had pants on and everything was covered up. And then next thing you know, they're feeling a lot better and they're in shorts and and I think things like that they're undervalued in a way.
Hmm.
Um, that is some monumental progress to have something like that happen in just a few weeks where somebody feels that much better about themselves. So trying to figure out how to consolidate your time is a very difficult thing because we're always adding to our plate all the time. And so you have to kind of like just kind of add one thing at a time. I'm mentioning many things here, but if you go away from the show and you try to add in, 3 or 4 things, you're probably going to fall flat on your face because there's going to be a detector in your brain where you're like, I don't really have time for this stuff. If I really think about it, I don't have time. And you're going to talk yourself out of it. That's why I'm a huge promoter of a 10-minute walk. I think most people throughout the day have an opportunity. They have some time to do a 10-minute walk. Just go outside, get some sunlight, hit up a walk. You can take some phone calls. You can do some emails. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can get it done. And then also when it comes to back to training, and I was mentioning the cardiovascular training and stuff like that. And I said, lift weights instead, but you don't need to lift weights for very long. You can just lift for like 20 minutes. Don't think that you have to spend 2 hours in the gym to get a good, effective workout. You can do some circuit training. There's CrossFit workouts that are 10 or 12 minutes long, and they will absolutely crush you. And they work your heart and they work your muscles. And so, try to think, how can I consolidate this time? The last thing I want to finish with, which is I think is probably the most important, is you're not going to always have time for everything. And you need to recognize in your life, for younger people, it's really important that we just recognize that the time that we have is like the weather. It's going to come and it's going to go. You're going to sometimes have time for stuff, and you're sometimes just not going to have time for stuff. I know a lot of parents are very, very concerned about the amount of time they spend with their children. But the amount of time you spend with your children, that's going to come and that's going to go as well. There are going to be times in your life you might be really working very hard on your career, and you might be pushing the envelope, and 6 days out of the 7 days in the week, you are away, you're working through the night. Even when your kids are around, you're emailing, and all those things, we can look at that and say, hey, that's horrible, right? We can say that's a form of like neglect, in a sense. But if you can just kind of zoom out for a minute and look at yourself and say, I need to be reasonable with this. This is just a moment in time. I feel like I need to do this at this moment for this to work out this way. So people that are like underslept and tired all the time, people that are kind of dragging around, you do have to ask yourself the question, are there some corners, are there some opportunities in the day where I can pick up a little bit more time so I can get a little bit more sleep and take care of myself a little bit better, try to take my sleep more seriously. But aside from that, also just recognize, like, you might go through this process of, grinding, or this process of really just kicking the crap out of yourself every single day, but it might only last, it might be a month, it might be 2 months, it might be 3 months, but, have a goal and have kind of an end date in mind of how long are you going to realistically be able to work this way? Because otherwise you'll be kind of, working yourself to death. So, well, with me, what's weird is that when it comes to time, I literally make time for stuff. I make time for interviews like this. I make time. There's people that come into my gym is free. We're in West Sacramento. Anybody who wants to come check it out, 855 Riverside Parkway, West Sacramento, California, super training gym. People come from all over the world, and somebody's like, hey, Mark, how's it going? I stop, I talk to them. All it means is that something else is going to get bumped off my plate for a minute. But because I own my own business and I kind of set my own schedule, for me personally, I don't have deadlines. So I don't necessarily need to go run and do something in particular. But I am always spinning a lot of plates all the time. And the whole key, and I think, what people really marvel over for people that are in these positions of power and people that are successful and making money and things like that, is they are spinning a lot of plates at one time. But when you're young, I think it's important just to understand, just concentrate on spinning that one plate and don't let that one plate fall down. You'll be able to get to the other ones as you progress and as you continue to advance.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we're reaching the 40-minute mark, and I know that you only had 45 minutes, so I don't want to go over our time limit. So thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all this amazing information. I think it will really help the listeners, especially the younger ones who maybe have never really even thought about nutrition or exercise yet. So yeah, thank you so much for all this valuable information.
It was fun. If you want to sneak in one more question, you can go for it.
Okay. Well, let's see. Okay, yeah, this is one I wanted to ask you. A lot of people are scared of failure, right? Especially young people. I think the word failure, and especially in engineering, is like, oh my gosh, you can't fail. But failure, I don't think, is a bad thing. And I look at failure as a way to learn a lesson. And I think if you take away a lesson from a time you failed, it's not really a failure anymore. What are your thoughts on failure?
Do you have an engineering degree background?
Yeah, I'm about to finish up my bachelor's in computer science.
Oh, very cool. You know, one of the ways that we gain knowledge is well, the only way that we gain knowledge. I don't even know if people know this, but for those of you that are really into brainiac type things, you can look up the professor of quantum physics of Oxford, David Deutsch. David Deutsch talks about where knowledge comes from, and he says that knowledge comes from criticism, conjecture, and it oftentimes comes from failure. That's where we learn stuff. You know, we think that things come from science, and they can sometimes come from scientific studies that are done, you know, in a particular way. But if we just sat around and read study after study, we would never get anywhere. We would never actually do anything. The quickest way to learn whether you can jump really high is to jump up and try to touch a basketball net. You know, the quickest way to know whether you can run really fast is to run against a bunch of other people. You know, maybe even have a time recorded but you did run at some point. Like, hey, I ran this in 10 seconds. And someone else can say, well, I ran it in 9. And you're like, oh shit, I'm not as fast as I thought I was. You have to fail. Failure is important. You want to be in a culture where failing fast is promoted. From a employer and perspective, or a leader perspective, or a management position, you want to give stuff to people, and you don't want them to fall flat on their face, but it's great for them. It's great for you to pass something off to them, knowing that it's fairly challenging, and understanding that, oh crap, like they might fall flat on their face with this project. That's okay though, because as soon as they fall flat on their face, now you'll have more answers. Now you'll know. When it comes to hiring people, we hire very slow, but we fire very quickly. Sometimes somebody still slips through the cracks that doesn't fit exactly what we're looking for. And when we will learn exactly what we want in an employee from that person getting fired, which it's the worst thing in the world to ever let go of anybody. We've had a few people here that have been here for a couple of years, and it's just the most dreaded thing that you can think of. But it's important because you have to learn. Failure is always an amazing opportunity to learn. And I think that we think that that's some like BS excuse that people make when they don't win. And we're like, that's what the losers say. The losers are like, well, I'll get them next time, and I learned a lot. But no, you really do. It's important to mess up. And I think when it comes to something like engineering, or it comes to software, being creative with technology, just like it actually is not a bad idea to almost come up with the worst idea possible and work your way backwards. Like, what would be the worst, most time-consuming piece of crap thing that we can come up with? Like, and it could be something silly. It could be something, it could even be something that's fake or funny. At least it makes the room laugh, but it also brings about a certain amount of creativity. If you were to ask a child and you said, hey, there's all these different apps online. There's all these different video games that you can play and stuff. What would you love to see in a video game? That kid's going to rattle off all kinds of stuff that you better write down, because he's going to have a couple good ideas in there, but he's also going to have a couple ideas that are really crap. And you've sat there and talked to him and said, well, you can't really make a game like that because of this. And you kind of went over some of the logistics with him. You might start to quickly realize he has a bunch of ideas at the moment that might fail, but he also just rattled off a bunch of stuff that sounds pretty good. So failure is critical. For younger people, I think it's really important that they move. And when I say move, like move to another state. Don't just hang out in the area that you grew up in your whole life. Find out if you want to live somewhere else. Don't live your parents' life. Don't just stay in the same religion that your parents are in because you just were born into that. Make decisions for yourself. Start to look around. Start to question things. Question the world. Question the knowledge. Question where things are coming from, and find out what it is that you enjoy. Do you just live, near your parents because You want to be close to them and you want to be cozy, but that's fine. It's fine if you appreciate your family and love your family that much. That's great. But also, again, just realize what I said earlier. It's just a moment in time, So you might be living in Michigan, your parents might live in California, and you just might be in the cold weather for a year or two. But then maybe you find out that you actually just hate that place. You don't like that place. And then you're like, all right, well, maybe I'll try Texas, and you try something else again. And maybe that doesn't work, but at least you did it. At least you went and you did it and you learned exactly what you need. That's the only way. That's the only way you're going to be able to really acquire knowledge is through some failure and through poking holes in a lot of ideas. And the fastest way to poke a hole in an idea is to mess it up.
Yes, I could not agree more. I think some of my biggest lessons in life have come from moving to other countries and just going on my own and seeing what would happen. So,
Scary as hell, right?
yes. Yeah, at the end you go, why the heck did I do that? But I'm glad I did. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, it was great being on your show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Well, that's it for today. I hope you all enjoyed the episode. As always, please let me know what you thought and any specific questions you'd like me to answer. If you enjoyed the show, please help me out by telling your friends and sharing this episode with others and on your social media accounts. The more people who hear it, the more people I'm able to help. And if you want to support me financially, you can do so by visiting my website, www.breakingintosoftware.com, and clicking on the support tab. You can also find more content on our website, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, Reddit, and Facebook, all under the name Breaking Into Software. All these links and the ones to find our guests are listed in the show notes of the episodes. Thanks for listening.